Hello students, I am Dr. Harmeet Goyal. As most of you already know me, so I have come up with a rapid fire of revision of some sample questions of OBS and Gynae for this upcoming exam on 31st August 2020 for foreign medical graduates. I have selected some of the questions and some of the questions I have made myself, although majority of the students who wanted to attend my classes, they have already attended the online classes. Some of them has already attended the one-day revision program, and on the demand I have to take 2-0 revision program for the second time again in this session, which I have already completed. And many of the videos I have already released on my YouTube channel, but still there was a demand for a rapid fire of revision of some of the selective questions so that students can be comfortably be able to boost up their confidence level, because Obs Gynae is a subject which no student want to miss. So I'm just sharing my screen.
So students, I'm just sharing my screen. You can follow me on my YouTube channel, Instagram, and my Facebook, Dr. Harmeet Goyal Obs Gynae discussion group. So let's go for a rapid fire of revision of some of the selective questions. Students, whatever I felt after looking for the previous year's questions which I have got it from the students who have already given the exam, I decided to discuss some of the important topics. Does not mean that the single liners, image-based questions and all clinical questions, you don't have to do it. Just a selective questions. We cannot decide what type of questions can be asked. This is just a guesswork from the previous year's papers. As I've been taking classes of FMG since it started, so my experience of last 18 years of teaching, some of the questions I've selected. Okay, so I'm taking up the questions. 28-year-old lady presented with 8 weeks amenorrhea, bleeding per vaginum. On examination, cervix is closed, bleeding is present but scanty, and the size of the uterus is equal to the period of gestation. Ultrasound was done in the same setting, showed fetal cardiac activity present. Name the type of abortion. Students, they're asking about the spontaneous abortion. One question is definitely been asked from the types of abortion, that is either inevitable or threatened or incomplete or complete. Okay, so this is a clear-cut history that there is 8 weeks amenorrhea, that is first trimester, bleeding per vaginum, cervix is closed, and size of the uterus is equal to the period of gestation. Whenever an ultrasound is done and fetal cardiac activity is present. A similar question was asked in 2019 December FMG exam. So let's see the options: inevitable, threatened, incomplete, complete. Okay. First of all, complete and incomplete, the cervix will be open. In incomplete abortion, the cervix will be open. Incomplete abortion, the cervix will be closed. But in both the cases, the size of the uterus will be less than period of gestation, and there will be history of expulsion of some of the products of conception. So these two are already ruled out. Okay. In inevitable abortion, all the size of the uterus is equal to the period of gestation, but products of conception will be felt on examination and cervix is open. So this also rules out. So threatened abortion is the correct answer to these questions. Let's quickly see from the image. Threatened abortion, the conceptus is at the uterine cavity and cervix is closed. Size of the uterus is equal to the period of gestation, and most of the cases the cardiac activity is present, and this type of abortion, the pregnancy can be saved by giving progesterone support. Okay. For the first trimester of pregnancy, it is necessary. From the second trimester onwards, the placenta is full-fledged form, so it will take over the function of the corpus luteum. In case of inevitable abortion, products of conception will be felt on the examination and the cervix will be open. Okay, so pregnancy cannot be saved. D and E has to be done, dilatation and evacuation, with the help of ovum forceps. Such a question was asked in FMG exam 2013. In incomplete abortion, there will be expulsion of some of the products of conception, and the size of the uterus will be less than the period of gestation. cervix will be open, and some of the products will be hanging out in vagina. Okay. In complete abortion, the products have already been expelled. Bleeding when the patient comes to you has been scanty. Okay. And the size of the uterus will be less than the period of gestation. In case of missed abortion, which is shown in this figure, the fetus is dead and retained inside the uterus. Okay. So there will be history of brown color vaginal discharge. Okay. And the option missed abortion is already not there in this case. Okay. So most common cause for first trimester abortion is trisomies. For the first trimester abortions is the trisomy, monosomy, that is the chromosomal causes. For the second trimester abortion, it is cervical incompetence and congenital anomalies of uterus, where septate and bicornate uterus are the main causes for abortion. And another cause of abortion you should not, you should be ruling out, that is the diabetes, the progesterone deficiency, the thyroid disorders, and antiphospholipid antibody syndrome, which are the important causes of abortion. One more thing, students, remember, TORCH group of infection causes abortion, but they are never the causes of recurrent abortions. Whereas chromosomal anomalies and the cervical incompetence, as well as the antiphospholipid antibody syndrome and the congenital anomalies of the uterus, they are the causes for recurrent abortions also. So TORCH infection never causes recurrent abortions. Next, a multiparous lady comes with complete perineal tear. She gave history of home delivery by dye at 2 weeks ago. Best time to repair the complete perineal tear. This is the question which has been asked in the NEET PG exam, and the DNB is taking NEET PG as well as the FMG exam. So some of the questions are repeated in FMG. So I've taken up this question. Okay. So complete perineal tear, if occurs on the spot, it should be repaired immediately. And if the patient comes later, then some of the healing must have occurred by the granulation tissue. If the patient comes late, then the complete perineal tear should be repaired after 3 months. So answer to this question will be 3 months. Let me quickly tell you the degrees of perineal tear, which is very, very important for questions. First degree perineal tear is the tear of the mucosa and skin. Second degree tear is mucosa, skin, and muscle tear. Third degree tear is anal, sphincter tear. And students, the fourth degree tear is anal canal tear. Anal canal tear. So the episiotomy mediolateral we are giving is a second degree perineal tear. Mediolateral episiotomy that we are giving, okay, is a second degree perineal tear. Now, all of the following are the triple test markers for aneuploidy, except aneuploidy means the trisomies. Okay, so the options are beta-HCG, estriol, alpha-fetoprotein, and estradiol. Triple test marker or a quadruple test or the first trimester markers, they are always interested in asking. And the question on the Down syndrome, that it is trisomy 21. Last time they have asked what is the type of, in 2019, what is the most common congenital heart disease in Downs? So the answer is endocardial cushion defects. Endocardial cushion defects. So here the triple test markers are beta-HCG, estriol, alpha-fetoproteins. All these are being secreted by the placenta. So they are the markers for fetal condition. Okay. And 80% of the placenta at term pregnancy is fetal in origin. Okay. So answer to this question is estradiol. Estradiol is not a marker for the triple test. Okay. Sometimes they ask about the quadruple test. So what are the markers for quadruple test? Is beta-HCG, estriol, alpha-fetoprotein, and inhibin A. So if these are asked, then this will become quadruple test. Quadruple test. Next. 35-year-old multiparous female comes with history of menorrhagia for last 8 months. Ultrasound was done, showed normal report. What would be the best next line of management in this case? Whenever any exam is being taken up from the gynae, there is always a question of menorrhagia or abnormal uterine bleeding or endometrial hyperplasia, okay, or pubertal menorrhagia. So that is definitely been asked. So it is very, very important. Mostly the pattern of the questions have been changed and they are focusing on the clinical questions which an MBBS doctor must know how to deal. Okay. So here it is a 35-year-old lady, multiparous, comes with menorrhagia for last 8 months, ultrasound done, and the report shows normal. Okay. So that means there is probably no history of endometrial polyp or the fibroid. Otherwise, some finding must have been picked up on the ultrasound. Okay. And also endometrial thickness you can measure on ultrasound. For the type of hyperplasia, it is always the DNC report which is important. What is the best next line of management in this case? Okay. Looking at this ultrasound report, you should never mark your answer as hysterectomy because it is a treatable cause, and why to expose a female for a major surgery. So hysterectomy will never be the answer. We don't know what is the cause of this bleeding. Ultrasound finding has shown normal. Okay. So hormones should not be prescribed unless until we know about the status of the endometrium in the microscopical examination. Endometrial ablation is always, like there is a possibility to be done in cases of 45 years of age or above. So again, endometrial ablation is ruled out. So answer to this question is endometrial sampling, and it is done by endometrial biopsy curette, or there is a office biopsy cannula, disposable plastic cannula, which is put in the uterus, and in the OPD or in the minor OT, this sampling can be done and sent in the formalin for the histopathological examination. If it shows hyperplasia, accordingly the progesterone treatment can be given, or we can insert the Mirena, which is a hormone releasing IUCD, and it is known to reduce the menstrual blood loss in 97% cases. So we want to know the status of the endometrium. So endometrial sampling has been done. Such a question has been asked in the NEET PG, and similar question has been asked in the December FMG exam. Next, a 16-year-old girl comes with heavy vaginal bleeding. All investigations are to be done except young patient coming with heavy vaginal bleeding. Okay. So in this case, most probably it must be some hormonal imbalance, or it may be some coagulation disorder, or you have to rule out the genital tuberculosis. Genital tuberculosis, most of the time it is a hematogenous spread, primary focus being in the lungs or the lymph nodes, etc. But does not mean that in the young age group, the genital tuberculosis cannot occur. It is very much an important cause of menorrhagia, okay, or it can lead to amenorrhea, oligomenorrhea. Later on after marriage, it can lead to infertility, okay, because majority of the genital TB lies in the fallopian tubes, leading to the blockage of the tube. 50% of the genital TB lies in the uterus, which is causing menorrhagia, later on oligomenorrhea and secondary amenorrhea, okay. So vaginal epithelium is usually resistant to tubercular and gonococcal infection because it is a multi-layered epithelium. Okay. So in this case, coagulation profile must be done. Complete blood count, including the platelet, should be done. Thyroid function test should be done to rule out any thyroid disorders. Okay. Along with complete blood count, the peripheral smear should also be done. So coagulation profile, the complete blood count with peripheral smear, including the platelets, thyroid function test, and ultrasound should also be done. Okay, investigations for tuberculosis, that the blood sample should be collected and sent for the PCR for genital TB, okay. Or it can be done for a systemic TB like Montus test and other tests for tuberculosis, okay. So DNC is not recommended in young patient. It is not going to solve any purpose. Okay. And also there should be a possibility that either she is sexually active or not. Similarly, a urine pregnancy test can be done if she is a sexually active male. Okay. So I would like to answer this question, and I would like to mark the answer as DNC is not recommended in such a case. Which of the following is not estrogen dependent pubertal change? This is very, very important. Although most of the time they are asking the question, what is the first sign of puberty? That is thelarchy. What is the sequence of puberty? Thelarchy, pubarchy, menarche. Okay, hormone responsible for thelarchy, that is the estrogen. Okay, but sometimes there can be a change in the pattern of the question. So that is why I have taken some selective questions. All those questions which I have already discussed in my classes or in my revision programs, or I have made some of the questions PDF which I've shared in various groups and students who are sending me messages, and I'm sharing that. Apart from them, what are the other selective questions you should be revising at this crucial point of time, because we do not know from which part what type of questions can be expected. Okay, so which is not an estrogen dependent pubertal change? Thelarchy, pubarchy, menarche. Thelarchy, the breast development always is a pubertal change which is estrogen dependent. Menarche is always estrogen dependent because uterine changes, that is proliferation of the endometrium, estrogen is responsible. So menarche is a change which is estrogen dependent. Then the estrogen also is responsible for vaginal cornification. Cornification index or karyotypic index is under the effect of estrogen. So vaginal epithelium is also undergoing changes under the effect of estrogen. Cervical mucus, estrogen causes profuse and abundant cervical mucus. And if you make a smear, you will see the furning pattern of cervical mucus. And even in the infertility cases, you check for the Spin-Barrett test. So cervical mucus change is also an estrogen change which is seen. Hair growth is dependent upon androgens. So answer to this question is hair growth. 26-year-old pregnant mother who had previous twin delivery visits antenatal clinic OPD for routine checkup. Okay, she is sure for her dates at 36 weeks. What is the obstetric score? Students, many times they are confused with writing the obstetric score. Last time they have asked a question, what is grand multipara? So more than 5th pregnancy, this is called as grand multipara. Okay, so gravida. Gravida means number of times she is pregnant. So she is having pregnancy at 36 weeks. So gravida term is used. Okay, she has a history of twin delivery. P means parity. L means live tissue. A means abortion. Okay, so these are the terms which are being used. So gravida, she is second time pregnant. So these two are already ruled out. Among the two you have to select. Now, since there is a history of twin delivery, but delivery will be counted as 1 and L will be counted as 2. So complete formula of this will be G2 P1 A0 L2. Okay, so answer to this question is parity 1. It is not parity 2 because only one delivery she had and it was a twin delivery. Okay, L means live babies. So presently she is having 2 twin babies which was delivered at once. Okay, and second time she is pregnant. Next. All of the following are postcoital contraception except so always there is a question on the postcoital contraception topic, disorders of menstruation, infertility, ectopic pregnancy, gynae cancers, fibroid, okay, vaginal discharge. These are the important topics which I have already mentioned in my classes or in my previous videos. Okay, so emergency contraception, definitely they are asking. Copper IUCD is one of the important and best emergency contraception. It can be applied within 5 days of unprotected coitus, because we do not know this act of coitus has led to fertilization or not, even if the fertilization has occurred. The copper T insertion will prevent the implantation, but simultaneously mind it will not give any protection against ectopic pregnancy. OCPs is also used as an emergency contraception in the hormonal. Okay, RU486 is also used. So these are hormonal emergency contraception to be prescribed within 72 hours of unprotected coitus, Corpor IUCD within 5 days. LNG is a contraceptive. It is not an emergency contraception. LNG IUCD in use is Mirena, that is not emergency contraception. So answer to this question is LNG IUCD. Okay. Next, a lady comes with 10 weeks amenorrhea, copper T in C2, thread is visible, next line of management. This is an important question, 2019, 2018, FMG exam they have asked. So all the latest question I have selected some form of question or some of the options I have changed. Okay. So as to create a new questions. Now, 10 weeks amenorrhea and she was using copper T. Ideally, she should have come once she misses her periods. Okay. So that time, something could have been done. Okay. But anyways, she has come with a 10 weeks amenorrhea with copper T in C2 and the thread is visible on first speculum examination. Always remember in the question, whenever it is written, thread is visible. So you have to remove the copper T. Now you have to select which is the best answer for you. Remove the copper T as it is teratogenic. No, students, copper T is never teratogenic. This is clearly written in your undergraduate textbook Shaw's and even in your obstetrics textbook Datta. So copper T is not teratogenic. Okay. Remove copper T as it is a source of infection. This is the correct answer. And exactly this line is given in your undergraduate textbook. Continue the pregnancy and don't remove copper T. That's a wrong answer. Okay. Do nothing. That is also a wrong answer. So answer is remove copper T as it is a source of infection and give the patient a choice of MTP. If she wants to continue the pregnancy, let her continue. If she does not want to continue the pregnancy, then it is a first trimester. You can very well perform MTP in her. If on the other hand, the question is written, the copper T thread is not visible. In that case, you continue the pregnancy and remove the copper T at the time of delivery. Now, most important indicator for good obstetric care. Good obstetric care. The options are maternal mortality rate, infant mortality rate, perinatal mortality rate, or neonatal mortality rate. Whether this question is actually from your preventive obstetrics, which is overlap between the PSM as well as in the gynae. So I'm discussing it here. Okay. Most common cause of maternal mortality in India is obstetric hemorrhage. That I have already mentioned, and it is PPH, which is nowadays we say is a preventable cause. That is why oxytocin should be given after the delivery of the baby in all the cases, okay, to prevent the postpartum hemorrhage. And indirect cause of maternal mortality in India is anemia. Okay. Denominator of maternal mortality rate, you have to remember, per 1,000 live births. Sorry. Maternal mortality is calculated per 1 lakh live births. Per 1,000 live births is the infant mortality rate. Okay. So maternal mortality rate has nothing to do with the good obstetric care. Again, the infant mortality rate. Infant mortality rate is infant is less than 1 year. So if the baby is born and baby death occurs at 8 months or 9 months, what is the obstetric care going to do with that? So infant mortality rate is again not telling you the obstetric care. Neonatal mortality rate again is ruled out. So the answer to this question is perinatal mortality rate. That means fetal death occurring after 28 weeks of pregnancy within 7 days of life. Okay. So that is what is perinatal mortality. Now, 16-year-old girl, height 142 centimeter, presented with primary amenorrhea on examination, no breast development, congenital webbing of neck, likely diagnosis. Definitely there is a one question being asked always on the Turner syndrome. So it is just a straight finding. In 2019, for last 5 years of FMG exam, I'm seeing a question definitely being asked from the Turner syndrome, or at times 2 questions are being asked. So it's a straight question: primary amenorrhea, no breast development, congenital webbing of neck. So Turner syndrome. Type of congenital heart disease in Turner syndrome: bicuspid aortic valve. Okay, so Turner syndrome, all of you know the features. If bicuspid aortic valve is not written, then coarctation of aorta. Karyotype they ask, it is 45XO. Sex chromatin they ask, sex chromatin is absent. It is a cause of primary amenorrhea, most common cause. It is associated with infertility. The patient is prone for diabetes, autoimmune thyroiditis, and osteoporosis later in life. So the treatment only we can offer to this patient is estrogen. That's a straight question, and it is very, very important question because endometriosis has become one of the important cause for infertility, and the gold standard investigation for endometriosis is laparoscopy. So 1 or 2 questions definitely been asked from the endometriosis topic. Endometriosis is presence of endometrial tissue outside the uterine cavity, and most common site being the ovary, and it is present as the chocolate cyst ovary. The rare site is the CNS. The most appropriate theory to describe the endometriosis is transimplantation theory, that is based on menstrual reflux. The most common symptom of endometriosis is congestive dysmenorrhea. Okay, infertility is not the most common presentation. Congestive dysmenorrhea, menorrhagia, infertility is the classical presentation. So most common symptom you will mark is the congestive dysmenorrhea. Treatment will be medical or it is the surgical. So young patients, always you prefer doing the surgery because it is, cosmetically good, and in spite of the confirmation of diagnosis, you can do the therapeutic aspiration of the chocolate cyst, adhesiolysis, and destruction of the endometriotic implants. So just remember, if it is mild endometriosis, then the treatment for infertility is ovulation induction, clomiphene citrate or letrozole. If it is moderate to severe endometriosis where there is lot of adhesions, so IVF is the best treatment. But in FMG exam, a question is not reached till they're asking about the infertility treatment. They're just asking the basics. What is the most common symptom, most common site, most common theory to explain, or the gold standard investigations. All that I have already mentioned. Most common site is the ovary, rare site is the CNS. Appropriate theory is transimplantation theory. The most common symptom is congestive dysmenorrhea. The gold standard investigation is laparoscopy. Any type of IUCD that you can prescribe in endometriosis patient is Mirena. If infertility is not a concern, then Mirena is a good alternative. Now, earliest to rupture ectopic, either earliest to rupture, late to rupture, gold standard investigation, all that you already know. So earliest to rupture is always ischemic rupture. Late to rupture is interstitial, that is cornual pregnancy. The gold standard investigation to diagnose ectopic pregnancy is laparoscopy because it is confirmatory of your diagnosis, and therapeutically you can treat the unruptured ectopic pregnancy. And if it is ruptured ectopic pregnancy, then always immediate laparotomy after arranging the blood should be done. You don't have to wait for blood to come to do the transfusion. Your patient will be gone. Always clamp the bleeding site because arterial supply of the fallopian tube is uterine and ovarian is a direct branch from abdominal aorta. Okay, so ectopic pregnancy definitely is an important question. 28-year-old female is brought to the gynae casualty with convulsion. Her BP on arrival is 180 by 120 millimeters of mercury. She is unconscious. Relative give the history that she's 8 months pregnant, and what will be the immediate line of management. When she has come, she's unconscious and she's throwing fit. BP is high. So definitely it is eclampsia and it is antepartum eclampsia. Okay, during pregnancy it is occurring. Okay, so options given are magnesium sulfate loading dose, labetalol, do immediate LSCS or maintain the airway. Students have a tendency to mark the answer as magnesium sulfate loading dose. No, always an unconscious patient maintain the airway first. Rest all of the steps to be done simultaneously. But remember ABC. Airway, breathing, and C is circulation. Has to be maintained first in any emergency case like this. Okay. So maintain the airway because tongue can fall back. Patient can aspirate the secretions and she can die. Okay. So maintain the airway, put in mouth gag, and like do the suction of the secretions so that the aspiration pneumonitis can be prevented. Then simultaneously load the magnesium sulfate IV and IM, simultaneously do the catheterization, and once she regains the consciousness, you can start her on antihypertensive. You can give labetalol or the nifedipine. Labetalol has an advantage that it is a drug of choice to control hypertension in pregnancy, and it can be given by IV also. Okay. And then you do the obstetric examination. Eclampsia means always a delivery. So check the status of the cervix, do the parvaginum examination, and accordingly decide it can be a cesarean section or it can be the augmentation of the labor. Induction of labor is not recommended in eclampsia as it may take 24 hours. That time she can have plenty of convulsions. Okay. Now, a multiparous lady has delivered the child in the hospital. Placenta was delivered. After that, she developed profuse bleeding. On examination, the uterus is found to be atonic. So it is a clear-cut case of atonic PPH. What is the first step in management? Uterine artery embolization? No way. Prostaglandins? No, it is never the first line. Prepare for uterine artery ligation. It is a third step. First is always a medical steps. Second is the mechanical steps like compression hemostasis, and third is the surgical steps. Okay. So first step is always uterine massage and oxytocin. One or two questions are obviously asked from the topic of PPH or acute inversion, which I have already discussed, or whichever teacher you have followed the notes or the classes must have discussed. Next, a 16-year-old girl presented with oligomenorrhea for last 6 months, increased facial hair, weight gain in spite of eating less. Most likely diagnosis in this case, definitely there is always a question from polycystic ovarian disease. Young girl with oligomenorrhea, facial hair means hirsutism, weight gain. Okay, so the options given are congenital adrenal hyperplasia, polycystic ovarian disease, ovarian tumor virilizing, adrenal tumor, androgen secreting. So these are usually the rare ones. Okay. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia, although presents as an adult onset with oligomenorrhea and hirsutism, okay, no doubt, but always it is recommended that most common cause of menstrual disturbance and hirsutism, PCOD is the first answer you should mark, provided that other causes you have ruled. In PCOD, you will do the ultrasound, you will see the Rotterdam criteria. 2 points are already fitting in. Okay, do the hormonal profile, fasting insulin, LH, FSH ratio, serum, testosterone levels, inhibin, E2-E1 ratio. Then you can confirm the diagnosis. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia, there will be a history of increased ketosteroids in the urine. So first answer to mark for the oligomenorrhea or menstrual disturbance and hirsutism, the answer should be PCOD, provided other causes you have ruled out. Absolute contraindication of IUCD, contraception disorders of menstruation are important topic. So absolute contraindication, relative contraindication of IUCDs and OCPs, definitely there are 1 question or the 2 questions or 3 questions. Okay. So absolute contraindication of IUCD, acute PID, previous LSCS, anemia, nulliparity. Nulliparity has become a relative contraindication because frameless IUCD can be applied. Anemia, you can apply Mirena, although copper T you will avoid, but it is not the absolute contraindication because Mirena, that is a hormone releasing IUCD, can be applied. Previous LSCS, the scar is in the lower segment, so IUCD insertion can be done. Now, answer to this question is acute PID. Next question, absolute contraindication of OCPs are all except, so this is again an important question. Okay, oral contraceptive pills, definitely there can be 2 questions or 3 questions from this. Okay, so active liver disease, hyperlipidemia, family history of breast cancer or coronary artery disease. So that means all are absolute contraindications except means which is a relative contraindication. Active liver disease is an absolute, family history of breast cancer is an absolute, coronary artery disease or there is a valvular heart disease or ischemic heart disease is always an absolute contraindication because OCPs contains estrogen and estrogen is harmful for such cases. Hyperlipidemia is a relative contraindication. So answer to this question is hyperlipidemia. Contraceptive with maximum failure rate, again it is an important question which was asked in FMG exam previously. So whenever a maximum failure rate or a minimum failure rate being asked of from the topic of contraception, always write down the failure rate. Okay, so they have asked spermicidal agent when used alone, male condoms, female barrier or IUCD. Male condoms, the failure rate is 2 to 10. Female barrier contraceptive, if they have asked about the diaphragm, it is 4 to 6. If they have asked about the, fam shield, then it is 7. IUCD, for example, if they have asked copper T380A, then it is 0.6. If they have asked about Mirena, then it is 0.1. Spermicidal agent when used alone, the failure rate is 30 per 100 women year. So relatively the answer to this question is spermicidal agents. So spermicidal agents are never advised to be used alone as a contraceptive method. It is always advised to be used with the barrier contraceptive to increase the efficacy of the barrier so that the failure rate can be minimized. Now 35-year-old lady presented with twin pregnancy at 38 weeks, pregnancy achieved after IVF, first baby is in breech presentation. Management will be, first of all, 35-year-old lady, okay, and 38 weeks of pregnancy and it is a twin pregnancy. So risk factor number 1, risk factor number 2, pregnancy is achieved after IVF in vitro fertilization, first baby is in breech presentation. Without looking at the options, it is to be elective cesarean section at 38 weeks. Okay, because in twin pregnancy, first baby breech or first baby transverse lie is an absolute indication for doing a cesarean section. Why in cases of first baby breech? Because it is the baby is at risk of asphyxia in transverse lie. She can go into obstructed labor and baby will not deliver. So rule for a vaginal delivery in twins is first baby is vortex presentation. Okay, so LSCS immediately is the answer. Why to allow her for labor when we want to do an elective cesarean section? None of the high-risk pregnancies are continued till 40. Induced labor wrong. Wait for spontaneous onset of labor is wrong. Primary gravida was brought to the hospital in collapsed state. The long statement wale question also is being asked in FMG exam as they are asked in the MCA in the NEET PG exam. Okay, so some of the questions of the long statements I have deliberately kept. Okay, so as to give you a clear-cut idea about the FMG exam. Primary gravida was brought to the hospital in collapsed state. Relatively, she is 9 months pregnant and the delivery was tried at home by DAI. That is, we are taking the history from the relative. On examination, the BP is 80 systolic, so she is already in shock. Temperature is raised. History of delivery being tried at home by DAI, that means a lot of intervention must have been done. So temperature is raised, it is already infected case, she's already collapsed. Okay. Per abdomen examination revealed that there is a prominent fetal parts. So it appears as the uterus has ruptured. Okay. There is a fetal heart rate not localized. Bloody urine from urethra is present on examination. Cervix is 8 centimeters dilated and fetal shoulder is present. That means it is a neglected shoulder presentation, transverse line. Okay. So, start IV line, arrange the blood, give antibiotics, take the time from the OT, take the high risk consent from the relative and quickly, immediately shift the patient to OT for laparotomy followed by cesarean section. This is a clear-cut case of obstructed labor, malpresentation with obstructed labor, with rupture uterus. So immediate laparotomy followed by repair of the uterus or cesarean section. Okay, that you can decide on looking at the intraoperative findings. Okay, so I've already told you, even if the fetus is alive, even if it is not a rupture uterus, all obstructed labor cases are managed by laparotomy followed by cesarean section. No role of destructive operation, no role of ultrasound. It is a clinical management. So no ultrasound will help you. And why to waste time? Oxytocin is already ruled out. It is a bullshit to write oxytocin. Okay. So immediate laparotomy followed by cesarean section. And followed by repair of the uterus or seeing the intraoperative finding if the uterus is badly ruptured and you're not able to achieve hemostasis, then might be the hysterectomy can also be done to save the patient. Remember, if you have to select save the uterus or save the patient, always it is save the patient, don't save the uterus. So life-saving hysterectomy might be needed depending upon the intraoperative finding. Now, cancer cervix screening by pap smear. Pap smear is a secondary level of prevention. That was a question being asked in the PSM, and it is a screening test. Okay. Pap smear should be started from 21 years of age in a sexually active female. It should be done every 3 yearly till her age is 30 years of age. Then every 5 yearly till her age is 60 to 65. So remember, the pap smear screening for cancers is done between 21 to 65 years. Next, Kohl-Exner bodies are seen in. I'm expecting this question might become, or there is Samoma bodies, or there is Schiller-Duval bodies, one question or the other. Kohl-Exner bodies, it's a clear-cut question that it is a granulosa cell tumor. Samoma bodies are seen in serous tumors and Schiller-Duval bodies are seen in yolk sac tumor. All are derivatives of Mullerian duct in female except Mullerian duct forms the female genital structures, uterus, cervix, fallopian tube, and upper portion of vagina. Lower portion of vagina arises from urogenital sinus. Okay. So answer here is lower vagina. Part of the decidua that covers the implantation site. So endometrial lining in pregnancy is called as decidua, and hormone responsible for decidualization is estrogen. Okay, decidua has 3 parts: the basalis that forms the placenta, capsularis that covers the implantation site, and rest of the endometrial lining is parietallis. And as I've taken this image, so capsularis is the one which is covering the implantation site. Okay. Next, karyotype of complete mole, that is again from the trophoblastic tumors. One question is being asked. Most of the time it is asking the karyotype of the complete mole or the partial mole, or they can ask about what is the treatment of H. molar pregnancy in young patient, which is suction evacuation, or the most common site of metastasis of choriocarcinoma, that is the lung. What is the tumor marker? Beta HCG. Okay, so karyotype of complete mole is always diploid, and abnormal chromosomes are always paternal in origin. Okay, so similar question has been asked in your FMG exam 2019. Previously they used to ask just diploid, tetraploid, triploid. Now they are asking abnormal chromosomes are derived from. So it is paternal in origin. Okay, so there is empty ovum and it gets fertilized by a sperm, and the chromosome of the sperms duplicates upon itself. So abnormal chromosomes are paternal in origin, as here it is empty uterus not containing any chromosomes. So fertilization has occurred and it is occurring against nature because the ovum was empty, no chromosomes in the ovum. So something will be formed, and that something will be the vesicles, no fetus. Okay. Next, a 10-year-old girl presented with the cystic marks in the left iliac fossa and suprapubic region. Examiner is not able to insinute the fingers towards the pelvis from the suprapubic region. Likely diagnosis, 10-year-old girl, it is the cystic mass. Okay. And this mass is arising from the pelvis. Let's see what are the options. Dermoid cyst or mental cyst, dysgerminoma, fibroid. It is a cystic mass, so fibroid is already ruled out, and moreover, before puberty, the fibroids are very, very rare because it is a disease of reproductive age group as it is estrogen dependent. Dysgerminoma never presents as a cystic mass, and it will not be a huge swelling that it is coming in the abdomen. It will remain restricted to the pelvis. Okay. Mental cyst will be arising in the abdomen. It will not be going into the pelvis. So it is a dermoid cyst. Dermoid cyst can occur at any of the age group. Okay. And it is a cystic swelling. So an ultrasound can, probably confirm the diagnosis. WHO cutoff limit for sperm count. The infertility is again an important topic. One question from semen analysis, one from the ovulation studies, or one from the HSG, the tubal factor of infertility, are usually the points where the questions are being asked. So it's a very, very simple question. 2-3 times it has been asked. WHO cutoff limit for sperm count is 15 million. Okay. For the motility of the sperms, the cutoff limit is 40%. Progressive motility is 32%. And morphology, it is 4%. Okay. So most important fertility indicator in semen analysis is the morphology of the sperm. The first investigation to be done in infertility case is always the semen analysis. Okay. The sperm attains motility and maturation in which part of the male genital tract? Remember, epididymis. Epididymis. Semen in the semen banks is stored under. Answer: liquid nitrogen. These are the straight questions which you should be able to mark the answers correctly. A sexually active female came with profuse, frothy, foul-smelling discharge with intense itching. On examination, strawberry cervix was revealed. Strawberry cervix, foul-smelling discharge, okay, that is clear-cut trichomoniasis. Weight gain in pregnancy, 9 to 11, 11 to 13, 13 to 15, 15 to 18. According to Williams, 12.5 kg. So the correct answer to this question is 11 to 13 kg. Next, extra calorie requirement in pregnancy. Some of the single liners are expected. So just to boost up your confidence, I have just kept some of the single liner questions. I could have taken a long discussion of 100 questions because many of the questions I wanted to keep up, but that discussion will become too lengthy on a video that can be discussed only on the online class or in the face-to-face class. Okay, so that we have a limitation as a teachers. Okay, so extra calorie requirement during pregnancy is 350 and during lactation is 600. Then iron, folic acid dose, calcium recommendation, all that you should be knowing. Largest diameter of fetal skull, it is always mento-vertical, which is 14 centimeters, and presentation is broad, management is cesarean section. For last few exams, the questions on the diameter, they have, like very, very restriction. They're not asking, I don't know what is the reason, but it might be asked. You can't expect that they cannot be asked. Okay, it is in your syllabus, so can be asked. So that is, you have to remember as a single liners. Now, what should be the cutoff level of blood sugar in a pregnant lady? You did screening for diabetes according to DIPSI criteria after 2 hours of giving 75 grams of glucose to her. DIPSI is Diabetes in Pregnancy Society of India. So latest criteria for screening followed is DIPSI after giving 75 grams of glucose, and the blood sugar levels are taken after 2 hours. So cutoff value is 140. And if the value is coming out to be more than 140, then GTT should be done to confirm. Then all the questions on diabetes you should be knowing. Okay. The most common congenital anomaly, that is the congenital heart disease, the specific for diabetes is transposition of great vessels. The most characteristic congenital anomaly is the sacral agenesis. The drug of choice to manage the diabetes in pregnancy is always the insulin because it does not cross the placenta, although oral hypoglycemic agents like metformin is also considered to be the safe. But I have a discussion with so many diabetologists, those who are managing the pregnancy, and majority of you have taken the same insulin we consider is the best choice. Now 34 weeks of pregnancy in a PIH patient, now complaining of bleeding, pain, abdomen, decreased fetal movements. On examination, BP is 150 by 102. So it is already a PIH, and she's complaining of pain, abdomen, bleeding, and decreased fetal movement. And on examination, uterus is tender, fetal heart is not localized. So it is a clear-cut case of abruptio placentae. So it can be a direct fall or trauma here. In the last exam, they have asked direct history of fall in the bathroom, so it was abruptio. But PIS, there is a vasoconstriction and separation of placenta, and they are giving history of, she's giving history of decreased fetal movement, and on examination, fetal heart is not localized. So it is clear-cut case of abruptio placentae. All vaccines are contraindicated in pregnancy except MMR is contraindicated, oral polio vaccine is contraindicated. Hepatitis B vaccine can be given, tetanus toxoid injection can be given. If there is a history of dog bite, rabies can also be given, because to save the patient is more important. Okay, so I've tried my best to compile. So revise the topic of PIH, APH, including placenta previa, abruptio placentae, postpartum hemorrhage, acute inversion of uterus, the topic of twins, the topic of normal labor, the topic of operative obstetrics, then the fetal skull, maternal pelvis, normal labor. Okay, the topic of contraception, disorders of menstruation, infertility, ectopic pregnancy, gynae cancers, fibroid, vaginal discharge, all that is important. So I've just tried to collect some of the questions, so just as to boost up your confidence. So all the best, very best, and thank you for watching the video.